1897, William McKinley has just been elected President of the United States and will be shot by an anarchist in just 4 years. The events leading up to his assassination will be driven in part by the Panic of 1893. This recession is a part of the gold rush story. Today, U.S. unemployment is above 8%, and the economy in the lower 45 states is not good. So many are being driven north to Alaska and the Yukon in a desperate search for gold. So the transient population of Skagway is a mass of humanity, between 8 and 10,000 strong, much like this morning. Now, saloons like this one were the lifeblood of the community. So today, we hope to give you a feeling for what might have happened in a saloon during the Stampede in 1897, and to tell the stories of those who ventured north to the Klondike, and of those entrepreneurial souls who decided to remain in Skagway. The show is called Klondike Gold Rush Legends and Lies, but we promise that all the people and stories you will hear today are completely true. Now, music played an important role in the life of the gold seeker, both as popular entertainment and a means to forget the trials of life on the trails to the Yukon. So today we'll be singing a few folk songs from and about the Klondike. But what better way to start our musical program than by singing Alaska's state song, Alaska's Flag. Now, the words are on the placemats in front of you. I know some of them are a little covered up, but if you would like to sing along, feel free to join us, and if not, you'll have another chance later on.
8 stars of gold on a field of blue, Alaska's flag may it mean to you. The blue of the sea, the evening sky, the mountain lakes and the flowers nearby, the gold of the early sourdough's dreams, the precious gold of the hills and streams, the brilliant stars in the northern sky, the Bear, the Dipper, and shining high, the great North Star with its steady light, o'er land and sea, a beacon bright, Alaska's flag to Alaskans dear, the simple flag of our last frontier.
Now, saloons were a lively atmosphere of rivalry and friendship, as well as a sense of community. Scottish poet Robert Service wrote extensively about this vital sense of camaraderie that made the arduous life of a stampeder slightly less grueling. The Ballad of the Iceworm Cocktail is a poem about this very topic. The full poem tells the story of longtime Klondikers, Deacon White, Skipper Gray, and Sheriff Black, betting against a very boastful and pretentious newcomer to the north, Major Percy Brown from London town. To prove his manliness, Major Brown is given a drink, the Iceworm Cocktail. Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. A dramatic reading of the Iceworm Cocktail by the saloon room's finest bartender and charismatic con man, Big Ed Burns.
So Barman Bill got busy, and with sacerdotal air, his art's supreme achievement, he proceeded to prepare. His silver cups, like sickle moon, went waving to and fro. And 4 celestial cocktails soon stood shining in a row. And in the starry depths of each, artistically piled, a fat and juicy iceworm raised its mottled mug and and smiled. But through that tense and peering crowd, suspended was the fun, when Skipper Gray in courteous way said, "Stranger, please, take one." But with a gesture of disgust, the Major shook his head.
"You can't bluff me. You'll never drink that ghastly thing,"
he said. "Oh, you'll see all right," said Deacon White, and raised his cocktail high till its ice worm seemed to wiggle and to wink a wicked eye. Then Skipper Gray and Sheriff Black each lifted up their glass, while through the tense and quiet crowd a tremor seemed to pass. "Drink, stranger, drink," boomed Deacon White. "Proclaim you're of the best. A doughty sourdough who has passed the ice worm test." And with all eyes now fixed on the gaping Major Brown, like a libation to the gods, each dashed their ice worm down. Robert Service wrote the Ballad of the Ice Worm Cocktail as a humorous notion of looking at the very hard transition folks made from chichacos, or newcomers to the Klondike like yourselves, to sourdoughs, experienced Yukoners like ourselves. Now, Robert Service wrote this and many more years after the gold rush was over. But he brought to life the stories of the Great Stampede of 1897, making his own Klondike fortune of $2.5 million in the end of the century, writing songs as well as poems.
So there were fortunes to be had in the Klondike.
Oh, of course, just often not from mining the gold.
For the record, ice worms are real.
What?
Unlike the spaghetti they put in Major Brown's glass, ice worms are the only annelid worms known to spend their entire lives on glacial ice. Newly discovered on Muir Glacier in Glacier Bay, the Alaskan ice worms retreat by tunneling back into the ice at dawn and emerging again at dusk. These worms are just over a centimeter long, have pigments to absorb sunlight, and feed on the algae in the snow.
Less about those worms, and how about some more about those early Skagwegians?
Ah, a different kind of worm. Right you are, my good man. We are now in the Skagway Inn saloon room. This gold rush house of ill repute was originally located at the waterfront, which at low tide was 2nd Avenue and at high tide was 5th Avenue. In 1901, the building was moved here to the Red Light District at 7th Avenue and Broadway along Paradise Alley. Very properly named, I might add. It was here that J.D. Stewart, a naive stampeder who had just returned from those gold fields, was robbed of his gold poke, worth nearly $79,000 in today's money, by the bartender and notorious conman of Soapy Smith's 6th Avenue Saloon. Today, however, the inn operates as a bed and breakfast. The 10 original rooms, now guest rooms, all named for the women who plied their trade upstairs.
There was Alice,
Birdie,
Cleo,
Dottie,
Essie,
Flo,
Grace,
Hattie,
Ida,
and Kitty. All pseudonyms. It was common practice during the gold rush to give yourself a new name to reflect the new stampeder life you were living. And the hopeful stampeders that arrived here, well, they were all looking for fortune and adventure. Most of this horde was headed over one of the 2 passes to the gold fields, either the Chilkoot Trail, which stretches north from our sister city, Dyea, or the White Pass Trail, which stretches north from Skagway to the Klondike. But you see, the odds of hitting the jackpot are abysmally low. 100,000 men make that journey north to Alaska and the Yukon looking for gold. Of those 100,000 men, only 30,000 will actually make it to the gold fields. And of those men, only 3,000 will actually find gold. but less than a dozen men will become and stay wealthy. You may recognize some of these men, though. Men with names like Johan Nordstrom from Sweden, who started a small shoe store in Seattle when he returned from the gold fields, which later became the Nordstrom department stores. Or Alexander Pantages from Greece, of vaudeville and movie theater fame, after which the Pantages Theater in Hollywood is named. Or Friedrich Trump. Yes, Donald Trump's grandfather started accumulating their famed family fortune in the Klondike.
Now, the saloon is the lifeblood of this gold-seeking community. This was a place where people came to get news, to make deals, do your banking, play a game of cards, or find some companionship, eat as well as drink. Beer on draft sold for a nickel, and whiskey shots sold for 25 cents each. Alcohol was imported here all the way from Kentucky and even as far away as the south of France.
Bartenders were celebrities and craftsmen of an evolving trade.
And there are up to 80 different saloons here in this 20-block town. Despite the fact, though, that by law in the Alaska Territory, selling alcohol was illegal. Let's just discard that little fact, shall we? And get started on a very important skill, the free pour.
Now, typically, 1 shot is an ounce of liquor, but here in Skagway, we also accept an ounce and a quarter.
Very true. However, an experienced free pour bartender will hit that 1 ounce mark every time. Because if he overpours, the house loses money. And if he underpours, the house loses customers. Folks, you will find on your tables a free pour practice bottle just like mine, as well as a mixology kit. What I would like you to do is to take the mixing glass on the bottom of your silver cup and remove it. We're going to need it for later, so please put that aside, as well as your bartending tools up top. Your Hawthorne strainer, as well as your muddler. Take these 2 tools and drop them in the mixing glass also. You are going to need 3 things to learn how to free pour. Your practice bottle, your silver cup, and your beaker, which has been marked at the 1 and 1 1/4 ounce markings. Now, this isn't blind pour, so my recommendation is that everybody keep your beakers in the silver cup until you're ready to see how much you've poured. You're going to hold your pour bottle by the neck, and you're going to do a count of 6 that goes like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and. You don't go to 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and. But I like to give a little subliminal message to my pour, saying something like, tip your bartenders well. Words to live by, ladies and gentlemen. And you will find that I've gotten a sliver above the 1 1/4 ounce mark. I'll just remember to sip it before I serve it to someone. Now, just in case you do overpour or underpour, you can always dump it into your ice buckets and start over. Are we ready, Chichacos? All right, folks, let's get to pouring and we'll see how well you do. 1 and 1, 3 and. I like to call that, that's the house.
I know what I'm doing.
1 ounce on the line.
I know what I'm doing.
2 looking great. 1 and 2 and 3 and. This is Soapy's booze we're working with. Don't make them mad.
We're in that Skagway pour. Are we doing a Skagway pour? Right in the middle, very nice. Now, to those of you who got the Skagway pour, that means you have to move here now. I don't make the rules. So unless you try again and you don't get it.
I gotta get fired first.
How are we doing over here?
All right, see what we got.
Oh, that's not 1 ounce. Very nice.
1 ounce. 1 ounce. Between the 2, 1 ounce. Are you in need of bartending jobs? We are a little short on staff. What do we got over here? 1 1/4 between the 2. Looking wonderful.
Try again.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that we have mastered the art of the free pour, so it is time we move on to making our very first drink of the day. Now, folks, if you still have water in your beakers, dump them one final time. Now, what you're going to do with your empty beakers, you're going to pull them upside down and you're going to drop them onto the necks of your pour bottles so we can go around and collect them. You'll have more space to work with that way.
Now our first drink is called Alice's Gold Digger. If you remember the name Alice, it's because we mentioned her earlier. She was one of the madams of the brothel upstairs, and we make this drink in honor of her. Now this drink is made with whiskey, but does anybody here know the difference between whiskey and bourbon?
Yes. Bourbon County, Kentucky.
That's close, it's
Tennessee.
close. Well, you'll get to that part later, but what's the difference between the two in terms of the name?
Sour mash that they're using to make it.
You're on the right trail. I often like to say that all bourbons are whiskey, but not all whiskeys are bourbon. In the United States, the bourbon law makes that distinction abundantly clear. In order to make a bourbon, you got to use 51% fermented corn mash, and then you age it for 2 years in a U.S. white oak barrel. But sometimes it's often aged for 4 instead of 2. Now, the United States Congress declared bourbon to be the country's native spirit. So therefore, no other country on earth can actually make a whiskey and call it a bourbon legally. Now, just out of curiosity, which one of you happens to know which state produces the most amount of bourbon? Kentucky, exactly. If you said Tennessee, I'd be disappointed.
So to get started on our first drink, we're going to be grabbing our mixing glasses. And you're going to once again remove those bar tools and move them over to the silver shakers. And now inside our mixing glass, we're going to be grabbing our first ingredient off of those white plates. We're going to grab the rosemary sprigs, that's the little green bits on your plate, and you're going to pop those into your mixing glass. Then you're going to take your muddlers, and using the waffled end, you're going to muddle your rosemary nice and lightly. You just want to do it until you can kind of start to smell the rosemary a bit. Now we're going to grab our next ingredient, which is going to be your lemon slice, and you're going to place that into your mixing glass as well. Now we are going to muddle our lemon, but I recommend not looking directly into the glass while you muddle your lemon. You don't want lemon juice in your eye. But you want to get as much juice out of that as you can. Don't worry about the seeds and the rind. We'll get rid of those later. Alright, once you've muddled that up a bit, we're going to shake off your muddlers, hold them up, and we're going to collect those as well. You can't have a weapon once you start drinking. That's one of my biggest rules.
Always armed.
Now our next ingredient is going to come off of your shot glass racks. For my people in the back row who have 2 people, you're going to start on the outside, and you're going to grab the 2 tall glasses. And then for my people in the front row, that's all the way to your left. It's the tall glass that has the brown liquid in it. That is your sweetener. Now, by smelling it, can anybody tell me what they think it is?
Maple.
It is maple syrup. So I like my drink to be sweet, so I'm going to pour the whole thing in. But if you don't want it to be as sweet, you can pour half or 3/4. It's really up to you, but I go all in. Now next to that glass is going to be your whiskey. And you're going to want to pour every single drop into your mixing glass. Now we're going to go over to our ice buckets, and you're going to be placing a scoop of ice in this one, and then 3 or 4 ice cubes in this rocks glass as well. And then once you do that, we'll also be collecting your ice bucket. So if you wanted to put any ice anywhere else, I suggest you do it here. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to grab your silver shaker. You're going to place your strainer on your table for now. You're going to flip the shaker upside down. You're going to put it on top of your mixing glass, and you're going to want to seal it. I like to give it 2 good whacks on top. And even when you shake it, I would hold it nice and tight together just in case, and we're going to give it a good shake. Once the silver shaker gets cold, that means you've done a good job. And we're going to flip it over. And now you need to remove your mixing glass.
Thank you.
And now we're going to take our hawthorn strainers. You're going to place them spirals down onto the silver shaker. And then the way I like to hold this is by going in like I'm shaking a hand, but keep that pointer finger up so that it can be behind this tab right here, so that you can push this forward, so that this is on the edge when you pour and you're straining out all the seeds and everything. And you can pour that right into your rocks glass.
No.
Now we have one final ingredient, which is my favorite ingredient. We have edible gold dust on your white plates. So you can either pour the whole plate in, or you can just take a little pinch and sprinkle it right on top. Now once you've finished sprinkling the gold on top, I'd like everybody to raise their glasses. And I'm going to offer a toast. May you all find the true gold in life. Cheers. And give your drinks a try.
While you folks are enjoying your gold diggers, allow me to tell you a little story about how this gold rush exactly began. On July 17, 1897, the Seattle Post newspaper read in all capital letters, "Gold, gold, gold." 68 rich men off the steamer Portland with stacks of yellow metal. Some folks bring up to $5,000, while others bring back real fortunes of up to $100,000 in gold bullion. This discovery originally took place in August of 1896, when a prospector named George Carmack discovered gold off a tributary of the Yukon River just outside of Dawson City, Canada. This tributary was originally called Rabbit's Creek, and then quickly renamed to Bonanza Creek. The news of this discovery would take about 13 months to make it down to the lower 45. So when 100,000 hopefuls made their way up to Skagway, traveled the White Pass Trail and on into the gold fields, they discovered that there was absolutely no gold left. Virtually all that available land got swallowed up by the prospectors who beat them to the punch. Now all those latecomer chichacos, they had no choice but to take up land claims in undesirable areas, sometimes nowhere near the rivers, and even up on high ground, which is why a lot of them wound up working for someone else, for dangerous wages and dangerous conditions. Now, this way of life is told most eloquently in our next song, known as the Carmack Song. Ladies and gentlemen, open up your listening ears to this Klondike ballad that tells just how little that gold could have actually been found. George Carmack in Bonanza Creek went out to look for gold. Old timers said it was no use, the water was too cold. I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder why. They said that he might search that creek until the world would end. It's 1896, gold's been discovered in the wilds of the Klondike. Men are traveling from around the world into the unknown, Alaska and the Yukon. Gold fever has struck hard, and all of them are looking for that shiny, precious metal. But very few of them know how difficult this will be. For this is a tale about hope, heartache, and adventure. They said the willows on the creek the other way would bend, and not enough gold he would find a postage stamp to send. I wonder why, I wonder why, I wonder why. They said that he might search that creek until the world would end.
Victorian era when Klondike gold was discovered. So this was an exciting time, marked by artistic expression in music, literature, fine arts, and fashion, as well as political, social, and religious movements, and great advancements in science, technology, and medicine. A late 19th century spirit, absinthe, was created as a medicinal elixir and is a mixture of herbs and botanicals. This drink was very popular during the Victorian era, was banned throughout the 1900s, but subject to new regulations, was legalized in 2007.
It's absolutely true. Absinthe, nicknamed the Green Fairy, was first created in France and then spread out to other parts of the world, serving as the artistic inspiration for the likes of Vincent van Gogh, Pablo Picasso, Ernest Hemingway, Tennessee Williams, and even the painter of the ladies at Paris's Moulin Rouge, Monsieur Toulouse-Lautrec. Now, there can often be a great deal of mysticism and ritual surrounding the production of a glass of absinthe.
Let me show you several absinthe spoons. These spoons were highly decorative and beautiful, sometimes stamped with brand names or logos as advertising. Some were even made as tourist items. Like the spoons they made in the shape of the Eiffel Tower and sold for its inauguration.
Now, many of the absinthe drinkers preferred to implement theatrical props into the drinking experience. Hence, this device right here. This is called an absinthe rocker, or as the French called them, le brouillé, which means the scrambler, because that's exactly what it does. With a sugar cube on top of the spoon, I'm going to pour water on top of the cube, and that mixture of sugar water will then trickle down, and it's ideally supposed to trickle left and right, rocking over the device. Sometimes it works, other times it doesn't. It's one of those ideas that works great on paper, but then in reality it gets difficult. But what it would do is that it would take the green absinthe and then merge it into a milky emulsion, hence the nickname Green Fairy. Now, if you ever want to try to make absinthe at home, I'll give you a synopsis. All you got to do is take a base alcohol, such as brandy or vodka, and then add a series of botanicals into the recipe, such as anise, hyssop, verbena, mint, and most famously, wormwood. Because wormwood contains trace amounts of a hallucinogenic compound known as thujon. And that little pesky bugger thujon was the reason why by 1915, almost all of Europe and the United States outlawed the consumption of absinthe. Still, though, that didn't stop the French from consuming up to 48 million bottles of it in the middle of World War I, mind you, which led the authorities to blame absinthism for the debauchery of the drinkers. And this absinthism was defined by medical experts as a disorder affiliated with the abusive tendency of drinking absinthe, with side effects ranging to everything from hallucinations to sleeplessness to tremors and to convulsions. So now with all of what I've just told you, how about we try some, shall we? Folks, you will find in the middle of your flight racks a ½ ounce of absinthe. Nowadays, this is a legal and controlled substance, limiting the amount of thujon to only 5 parts per million. So, for the brave and the bold amongst us, bottoms up. But if this is your first time, I totally understand why you just want to take a little sample sip. What do you think of it, folks?
Fantastic.
If it tastes like licorice, that's the anise at work. But I still gotta warn you, it is a very powerful drink. On its own, absinthe packs a walloping 55% pure grain alcohol. That's about 110 proof. Thankfully, what you just sampled was diluted with sugar water or simple syrup, limiting that down from 110 to only 50 proof.
Well, I think we need to leave the sophisticated absinthe salons and the proper Victorians and
As you
get
wish.
back to the early saloons of Skagway, places which were hardly proper. You see, the first saloons here were tents, lined up on the newly formed muddy streets of this boomtown. Fancy establishments like this one came much later. The saloon room was crowded, it was muddy, and it was smoky, and filled almost exclusively with men. Now, the average man, he had no change of clothes, and he bathed rarely. So you can expect him to smell a bit like my friend Big Ed over here.
Wait a minute, what? I resemble that remark.
There was dancing, drinking, gambling, and payment for services was often in gold dust or small nuggets. Now, this exchange of currency led to saloons serving as temporary banks, which made them very dangerous places. This saloon alone served 175 customers per day during the gold rush. Everyone from newcomer like yourselves to prospectors to locals and, of course, con men.
Con men? Who said the magic word? Allow me to formally introduce myself then. The name is Edward Burns, but folks around here call me Big Ed Burns. I'm the bartender here at this establishment because I have what you may say a bit of a big heart.
And a bit of a checkered past.
Right. You see, I was born in Buffalo, New York in 1842 when I began my illustrious career
As a bunco con man.
as an entrepreneur. At the tender age of 19, I worked in Chicago, Illinois in such humble trades like stonemasonry and sailing. But I gotta admit, when I was 24, I had a minor altercation with the law.
Minor? You strangled a man to death.
Yeah, and I spent 9 years in Joliet prison for it. But upon my release, I reformed myself as the head of an organization down on the south side of the city.
Which was, once again, a bunco game
Nope,
that
no,
swindled
no,
money
no,
from people.
Nothing of the sort. we were, influencers for political candidates running for office. Now, some of you may know that politics can be a dangerous business, and I was shot at twice. First in the back from an old friend of mine, and then the second time right in my thigh. So I decided enough of politics. I was going to open up my own saloon instead.
Tell them how that went.
All right, my saloon license was denied, so naturally I had to resort to serving alcohol
Illegally.
from a boat on Lake Michigan. I was able to evade a plethora of police raids by jumping overboard.
And then he was arrested for vagrancy.
Well, they didn't keep me for long when they realized that I had plenty of money to work with. Though I was extradited to Detroit, of all places, on, get this, pickpocketing charges. So I decided to make my way over to Leadville, Colorado, but I didn't stick around there long either. That place was reeking of vigilantes. So I took my gang and put them out on the railroad, going from Kansas to New Mexico and Arizona, where I am proud to say that down in Tombstone, we outwitted those Earps. Virgil, Morgan, Wyatt, Earp. Ha! But over in Denver, that's where I fell into the inner circle of the Soapy Smith gang. Coming up with them here to Alaska to be with you and the rest of the innocents looking for gold who have wandered into the finest saloon in Skagway, where beer was very popular here. In fact, in 1898 alone, there were 3 independent breweries operating here. There was the Skagway Brewing Company, the Tivoli Brewing Company, and the City Brewery. Now, saloons at this time were starting to become very competitively priced. And so a lot of the brewers from down south started importing their product up here to Alaska. These shipping breweries were often started by those European immigrants, most often the Germans. Budweiser, Pabst, Schlitz, Miller, they all taste the same to me. Especially Seattle's Rainier were looking for wider markets, and Alaska filled that need. In fact, at one point, Rainier was so popular here, it was promoted in the newspaper as pure food, encouraging drinkers to skip a meal and have a Rainier instead. And the prospectors listened to that sales pitch. And it was truly what one would call a battle of the breweries up here in Skagway. And one of the winners of that battle is what you're sampling today. This is the Alaskan beer that's brewed here in Skagway today. And it is based on a Gold Rush era recipe, favorited by the Klondikers. So please, raise your glasses and cheers, everybody. What do you think of it, folks? What's the verdict?
Yes.
All right, cold, clean, and crisp. That's the way I like it. But I gotta ask you folks, what complements a beer inside a saloon?
Steak.
Steak? Medium rare in my case.
Another beer.
Another beer, of course. I was thinking something a little more substance, like boomtown food. Folks, while you're traveling on that White Pass Trail to the gold fields, starvation's going to be a real threat to you. So what you're going to be served today would have been very commonly seen eaten by your fellow tramp stampeders. Now, as soon as you're served, start eating immediately. Don't worry about the folks around you. Take those Victorian manners, throw them out the door, and make sure they stay out. Not in this saloon.
Water.
We got another chili. There you are, sir. And one more chili. Now, the reason you'll find food like this very commonly along the trail is for a couple of reasons. 1, it was cheap. 2, it was filling. 3, it was easy to carry along the trail. And most importantly, it was easy to transport in the wilderness. Because there was such a high threat of starvation among travelers across the border, the Mounties had to rule that every traveler needed to cross the border with a year's worth of equipment and supplies to guarantee survival, which means of the ton, 2,000 pounds of equipment, 1,150 pounds needed to be food. Now, you're not going to carry all that equipment at once. And if you're traveling in from our neighboring settlement of Dai, that's about a good 40 hikes up and down the mountainside of the Chilkoot Trail. And the whole chaos of gathering this food, you can actually find it in that photograph right over there on the back wall. In fact, food even serves a far greater anecdote in the history of the gold rush. It is believed that upon their initial discovery at Rabbit's Creek, Mr. Carmack and his confidants, Mr. Skookum Jim and Senor Tagish Charlie, celebrated their gold find by roasting black bear meat that night.
That meal would certainly satisfy a growling stomach. Get it, it's a bear?
Now, Mr. Carmack also made another food comparison describing that momentous occasion, saying, and I quote, that upon the prying open of the flat pieces of bedrock, I discovered raw gold between the slabs like a cheese sandwich.
That was a cheese sandwich with a lot of carrots.
And that leads me to one final article in the food department, and no, it is not leather. I understand in some emergencies, folks tended to use leather, boiling it, then eating it. But inside the leather pouch is sourdough starter. This is what you use to make sourdough bread, and it was a staple for every stampeder. In the wintertime, they prevented it from freezing by often carrying it around their necks or on their belts. Now, what you had to do to keep the starter going is crack it open and feed it bits at a time with dashes of flour and water. That way, the starter can last indefinitely, passing it on down from family to family and friend to friend over the years. And even to this day, the indigenous people, the Tagish Nation of Canada, are still making sourdough bread with Gold Rush era starters, which is why even we use the term sourdough to describe a survivor of Alaska and the Yukon, the opposite of a Tagish Chichako.
It is July 7th, 1898, and Skagway is the largest town in the north. At the time, there were 9 men to every woman. And even today, during the winter months, there are 4 men to every woman. So we like to say if you're a lady of Skagway, the odds are good. But the goods are odd. Now, these adventurous women who were drawn to the north were of 3 classes. You had number 1, the women who made their living working in brothels and cribs. Number 2, the entertainers, the dance hall girls, and the commission girls, like myself. Or number 3, the proper women who followed their husbands or established reputable businesses. Now, the proper and businesswoman saw an amazing opportunity here. Harriet Pullen was a very well-known Skagway businesswoman. With only $7 in her pocket, she made her way north to Alaska, leaving her husband and children in Washington to work for Captain Moore, the mayor of Skagway, for only $3 a day. Now, while she worked here, she realized that the prospectors were longing for something that they didn't have. I mean, they had women, booze, gambling, entertainment, hard labor. What more could a man possibly need?
In my case, I just spilled, so a mop.
No, you needed some home cooking at the time. Harriet Pullen was a very motherly woman and an excellent cook, and she knew that she baked a fantastic apple pie that these prospectors would do anything to get, because fresh produce was hard to come by during these days. and so she began to fashion pie tins out of empty cans and selling apple pies for $10, the equivalent of over $100 a day.
But worth every penny, folks.
Soon, she had enough money to move her family up to Skagway with her, and she eventually purchased the largest mansion in town and turned it into a hotel called the Pullen House. By the end of her life, she had earned the moniker Mother of the North and was known by everyone in town as Ma. Many women, however, did not meet that same level of success. Normally, a woman would get to town and then she'd have to say goodbye to her husband because it was too dangerous for her to join him on the trails. Often, that man never came back home. It's the story of lives cut short that lead us to our next song, which are the last words of a dying miner. A sad song, but one that tells the realities that many of these prospectors faced. The song is titled Just In From Dawson, and the words tell his story. A Dawson City mining man lay dying on the ice. He didn't have a woman nurse, he didn't have the price, but a comrade knelt beside him as the sun sat in repose to listen to his dying words and watch him while he froze. The dying man propped up his head above 4 rods of snow, and he said he never saw it thaw at 98 below. Send this little pinhead nugget that I swiped from chasing dills to my home, you know, in Deadwood, in the hills. Tell my friends and enemies if you ever reach the east, this Dawson City region is no place for man or beast, that the land's too elevated and the wind too awful cold, and the hills of South Dakota yield as good a grade of gold. Tell my sweetheart not to worry with the sorrow too intense, for I would not thus have panned out had I a lick of sense. Oh, the air is growing thicker and the breezes give me chills. Gee, I wish I was in Deadwood, in the hills. Tell the fellows in the homeland to remain and have a cinch, that the price of patent pork chops here is 80 cents an inch, that I speak as one who's been here scratching ground to find the gold, and at 10% of discount I could not buy up a cold. Now so long, he faintly whispered, I have told you what to do. And he closed his weary eyelids and froze solid PDQ. His friend procured an organ box and COD'd the bills, and sent the miner home that night to Deadwood in the hills. There were many people who made that journey north that couldn't find success. But a type of woman who could find success was the commission girl. My name is Kathleen Eloise Rockwell, but you can all call me Klondike Kate. I'm known for my racy chiffon flame dance, which is actually pictured over there. I was born in the free state of Kansas, but spent most of my childhood in Spokane, Washington. You see, my stepfather, he was a man of means, and we lived in a large mansion until his financial demise in subsequent divorce from my mother. Now, growing up, I was rebellious and independent, a bit of a tomboy, if you will, and sent off to boarding school, where I was promptly expelled. So I decided to try my hand at acting in New York City, with little success. Success, however, awaited me in the drive north to Alaska and Yukon, where I left in 1899 working as a tap dancer in Whitehorse, and then I joined the Savoy Theatrical Company up in Dawson. Now, during my first year in Dawson, I racked up a small sum of $30,000. And the miners liked my burlesque act so much that they're the ones that gave me the name Klondike Kate. I married 3 men. None of them died. I just divorced 2 of them. And then after the gold rush, I moved down to British Columbia and then to Oregon. I trained several future Hollywood starlets and devoted the last 50 years of my life to helping the poor. Because as a commission girl, I could be a pioneer in business and in life. You see, the commission girls worked the crowded dance halls and saloons where the wealthiest prospectors spent extravagantly on gambling and drinking. Men paid a full $1 for a dance, when a suit cost $2.50. The dance lasted 10 to 15 minutes and was often a lively polka. Commission girls averaged about 50 dances a night. And then they split the earnings 50% with the saloon owner. But the commission girl could further increase profits for herself by leading her dance partner over to the bar, where he would purchase drinks for himself and the commission girl, who earned 25% for every drink she sold. Little did the unsuspecting prospector know my drink was just colored water.
Now, the saloons here in Skagway were often notorious not only for drinking and for dancing, but also for gambling. You see, the card game of choice back in the day was not actually poker, but rather it was faro or 3-card Monte. Now, the folks who came in just out of the gold mines with their newly found pokes were intended to drink, dance, and gamble until they were completely gone. Gamblers, fools, and shills, an accomplice to a con game, littered the dance halls and the saloons of Skagway, playing faro, 3-card Monte, craps, keno, roulette, and many, many more.
Now, as a commission girl, I worked in these dance halls and saloons, and I picked up a couple tricks. So today, I'm going to be showing you 2 con games. Now, our first con game is called Fast and Loose. This is a very old con game. We know it dates back at least to Shakespeare's time because he mentions it in one of his plays. He says, "Don't play fast and loose with heaven, lest you jest with fate." It's also known as the never-ending chain or the figure 8. Now, does anybody in here know what game in a casino has the best odds?
Roulette.
It's not roulette. Blackjack is correct. The odds are 49 to 51 in favor of the house, of course. But you see, with my game here, we have 50-50 odds. One side will stick fast. That's a win. One side will fall loose, which is a loss. But still, 50-50 odds are about as good as it's going to get. So is anybody here feeling particularly lucky today and want to give my game a try? I'm looking for one volunteer to come on up and play a couple rounds of Fast and Loose. I promise I don't bite. You want to come on up?
Sure.
I thought I saw the lucky streak in your eyes.
You can come stand right over here. Now, what's your name? Sherry, it's nice to meet you, Klondike Kate. Now, what I need you to do is place your finger in either this side or this side, your choice. And then I remove the chain, and I do so from the same place every time. It fell loose. That's a loss. But as the con man in this scenario, I can throw the win to either side, right? So I think we we should try one more time. And this time, I want you to put your finger back in the same spot. And I'll remove the chain from the same place. And it's done fast. That's a win. Now, don't get used to that feeling because you probably won't feel it again. But I can still show you a trick, right? So if I lay the game out just like this, I'm going to give you a peek behind the iron curtain. So if I lift up this corner right here, you see how this side would fall loose and this side would stick fast. Okay? Now, are you ready to give it another go?
Sure.
Okay, put your 50 up right here. I'm just kidding, I'll place your bet for you. We have a painted gold rock. This is your bet. Now you take a good look at it and then choose your side. And then I remove the chain from the same place.
Oh.
But don't worry, this next trick is my favorite, right? So, I lay the chain out like this, right? And I bring this side around and I drop it right here. And you see this loop right here? This loop is very important. Because this loop is going to stick fast, alright? So I'll place another bet, painted gold rock once again, and I'll show it to you one more time. So we have our chain like this. We bring this side around and we drop it right here. We made our circle, right? Now this is where you make a very important decision. You have to decide if you trust me. Was I telling you the truth just now when I said that that loop is where you want it to be?
Trust
That's so sweet. Okay, and then I'll give you 5 seconds.
Oh!
I was gonna give you 5 seconds, but I'm not giving you 5 seconds anymore. I removed the chain from the same place.
Oops!
I'm feeling generous today, so I'll tell you what. I'm gonna place 3 painted gold rocks, all on the line.
I'll throw some skin in this game also. $500 cash.
So I laid the chain in like this, but this time we're gonna do it a little differently. I want you to put one finger in each side, but keep them close together.
Okay.
And I remove the chain from the same place. Now, this time I want you to take a good long look at it and then decide which finger to lift up. That loop right there, it's where you want it to be. But I'll tell you what, I do have a prize for you. I have a gold birch candy just for you and a round of applause from our audience. Now, I heard a couple chuckles out there in the audience, and I don't know why you were laughing because we still have one more card game, and this is one that you all get to play. It's called 3-Card Monty. If you remember J.D. Stewart in the beginning, how he lost that gold poke worth $79,000, he lost most of it playing this game. And today we borrowed Big Ed's cards, so that's why they're much larger than usual. We have an ace, a 2, and a 3. Don't pay attention to the 2 and the 3. Those are just there to distract you. You want to watch this red ace here, all right? So I'll bring my cards in and I'll give them a shuffle. I'll shuffle them every single time. It's very important. Now we have 3 cards here. Which card are we watching?
Ace.
All right. Where'd that red ace go? Yeah. Actually, it's over here. The 2 is right here. Don't worry, we'll do it again, but this next time I'll go much slower. So we give our cards a shuffle. Ace, 2, and our 3. I'll lift up this red ace so you can really watch it. Now let's see if you can catch this trick. Did you catch it that time? Where's that red ace? Over here? Where's the 2 and the 3? The red ace is down here. one more time. But do you think I need to be easier on him this time?
I think it might have to.
I think I should remove a card. So we'll take away the 2 so that we just have our ace and our 3 here. Now if I tilt the cards like this, is the ace on the top or the bottom?
Top.
And if I do this,
Bottom.
bottom. And if I do this,
Top.
it's actually on the bottom, but not that bottom, this bottom. And that is why you never play 3-card Monty.
Now, the con artists and the shills were often a lot wealthier than any of those poor prospectors coming back from the mines. In fact, they often preferred the protection of their fellow con man and even the de facto king of Skagway's scam artists, Mr. Jefferson Randolph Smith. Old Soapy was perhaps the most innovative and infamous con man of the century, and I also had the privilege of working for him. At least for a while, though. Smith's career as a confidence man ended here in Skagway on July 8th, 1898, when he got plugged full of holes over at that Juneau wharf, when Mr. Stewart demanded nothing less than the full return of that beloved gold poke of his. Smith, at only 38 years old, would leave behind a wife and 3 children down in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, Mary Noonan Smith would marry again, but this time choosing a man of the law for her second husband. Sometimes I remember Smith misquoting from a holy book, claiming that the way of the transgressor is hard. And then he would always add, to quit. The way of the transgressor is hard to quit. Well, in a way, his death had a way of settling that.
Despite the danger, though, and the hardships, and the longing for family back home, there was mystery, adventure, and excitement in the drive north to Alaska and the Yukon. It was a moment in history of heartfelt wonder and new discoveries that has yet to be repeated. Robert Service captures this essence in his poem, The Spell of the Yukon. There's a land where the mountains are nameless, and the rivers all run God knows where. There are lives that are erring and aimless, and deaths that just hang by a hair. There are hardships that nobody reckons. There are valleys unpeopled and still. There's a land, oh, it beckons and beckons. And I want to go back, and I will.
They're making my money diminish. I'm sick of the taste of champagne. Thank God when I'm skinned to a finish, I'll pike for that Yukon again. 'Cause I'll fight, and you bet it's no sham fight. It's hell! But I've been there before, and it's better than this by a damn sight. So for me, that Yukon once more. 'Cause there's gold, and it's haunting. And luring me on as of old.
Yet it isn't the gold that I'm wanting, so much as just finding the gold.
That's that great big broad land, way up yonder. It's the forests where the silence has lease.
It's the beauty that thrills me with wonder.
It's the stillness that fills me with peace.
You've learned so much of this lore of the Yukon, of the life good and bad, of a stampeder, a sourdough, and our Skagway Inn saloon, and it's time you've earned it to make your transition from newcomers to chacos to experienced sourdoughs. Now there is one glass left that we have not touched. I don't recommend smelling this one. This is a drinking vinegar, also known as a shrub. Now, I like to think this non-alcoholic beverage was very popular during Prohibition because it packs a similar yet different punch to alcohol. It does this by being made of sugar, fruit, and vinegar. Also slightly diluted with water, you're welcome. But it's also the fine stuff of our next toast to you all. Just as our friends in the beginning challenged Major Brown to drink the ice worm cocktail, we're going to challenge you to drink this full shrub. So So everybody raise your glasses for the ceremonial ice worm toast. From newcomers, chichacos, to experienced sourdoughs. Cheers.
Cheers. Woo! Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. You have passed your ice worm test. You are, by my reckoning, officially sourdoughs, contributing to the history and the memories we have here in Skagway. And I say we ought to celebrate with one final song. It's on your placemats, and I think it's a tune you might have heard of before. Auld Lang Syne, the New Year's Eve song. However, I've got to tell you, it was never actually intended for that. It goes back to 1788, when the Scotsman Robert Burns wrote a hymn to memories that they are to be cherished. So please, sing along, and if you're worried about your singing voice, don't be, because we'll be singing right along with you.
We're going to sing that section twice.
Should all acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should all acquaintance be forgot and the days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll drink a cup of kindness yet for the sake of old lang syne.
One more time!
Should all acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should all acquaintance be forgot and the days of old lang syne?
Everybody!
For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll drink a cup of kindness yet for the sake of old lang syne.
Ladies and gentlemen, may your memories always be bright.
And your hearts filled with gold.
Now, we do have a parting gift for you all. We have Legends and Lies pint glasses. And because we don't want anybody leaving Alaska without a little piece of gold, there's also a gold birch candy in the inside. And speaking of gold, we also have a gold tip jar in the corner. If Big Ed and I haven't swindled you out of all your gold nuggets.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You're telling me I missed somebody? I'm always missing one. Now, folks, we will be offering shuttle service back to the vessels, but if you would like to take a walk down downtown Broadway, we're on the corner of 7th and Broadway. You just simply take 2 right turns and you'll be walking in the direction of your ship. You'll see it as you're walking through downtown. If you're in the shopping mood, I recommend Lynch and Kennedy over on 4th and Broadway. And if you're in the mood for more libations, we actually do have the restaurant attached to the historic Skagway Inn. And don't be afraid to share your experience online and on social media. We often like to say as show business people that all publicity is good publicity. We'll also be outside on the patio for pictures, if you so please.